Ready to go? All right, welcome everyone. We've hit 5:30. We are just barely over quorum here with 7 of us. I've only heard from Ash and Josh that they weren't coming, so I suppose we could still see some others. I hear some dings going. Oh, actually, it looks like it's another guest. Why don't we pull another chair back? Oh, there's some down there. Well, I'm glad those who are here made time in their long summer days to come spend a little time here, particularly on one of the days this week where it isn't totally baking outside. So thanks for being here, and looking forward to the meeting. We've got some pretty cool stuff to catch up on here, and those who aren't here will hopefully follow the recording. And as you probably noticed, we're missing a couple of key people. Willow's not here, and Catherine is here in her stead, and thanks, Catherine, for filling in. And Josh, I just talked today is in Boston at some music thing, so he's not here today either. And then others, I don't know exactly where they are. I knew Ash wasn't coming. Let's see. Catherine, do you have the city's opening statement there?
The introductory remarks.
Yes.
Ready?
Perfect.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is Catherine Rohan. I am the City of Eugene staff representative for this meeting today. Normally it's Willow Hamilton. Before the chairs convene the meeting, I have a few reminders and introductory words. I would like to begin by acknowledging that tonight's meeting is being held on Kalapuya Ilihi, the traditional indigenous homeland of the Kalapuya people, who continue to make contributions in their communities here and across the land we now refer to as Oregon. The purpose of the Active Transportation Committee, the ATC, is 1, to advise the City of Eugene staff and community organizations and partners on the implementation of Eugene's pedestrian and bicycle strategic plan. 2, to represent community and constituent interests in transportation planning decisions. And 3, to provide feedback to staff on projects related to walking and bicycling. Eugene staff will consider recommendations from the ATC along with input from other members of the public during decision-making processes. Please keep in mind that this meeting is being both recorded and live streamed on YouTube. That's actually not true today. The YouTube recording will be posted when Willow comes back. Meaning it will be viewable in the future. All verbal and written commentary will be held in the public record. Today's meeting will begin with a 15-minute public comment period. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. When it is your time to speak, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward or neighborhood. We welcome and encourage public participation at all our meetings, but due to time constraints, only ATC members and invited presenters can ask questions and participate in discussions after the public comment period.
All right.
So we will. I have more.
You've got more? Okay, sorry.
We'll begin with public comment from those joining us online. If you would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature within Zoom now. I will call on you when it is your turn, and we will unmute your microphone at that time. We do have one participant, it looks like, joining us online. Oh.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Oh. But I did not see any raised hands.
Okay.
So with that, we will take public comments from the people here in person. Reminder to please give your name, city of residence, and ward or neighborhood.
Yes, thanks. And I appeared at this earlier and saw that, and thanks to those who are joining us both online and in the room. In the room, I would say it's our regulars. Appreciate you all being here as always, but only Connie has signed up for public comment. And Connie, as Catherine said, your name and
my name is Connie Berlin. I'm in the Amazon neighborhood in Eugene. I think we all know over the last couple of months there's been again some fatalities. Both the I-5 cyclist that was killed, and there was a pedestrian killed as well. I think, when I think of the I-5 thing, I think of probably all of us, almost all of us here have been forced onto a highway while being on a bike or even walking or hiking. And it's regardless of what possible state the person who was doing that was in, it's an extremely dangerous thing if you have to do it to get from place A to place B. But I really wanted to talk about something that happened to a friend at 19th and High. He was at 19th and High, stopped in the bike path as a cyclist. And everyone was stopped. There was a walk sign that the pedestrian took. And as he was proceeding into going up High Street, someone ran a red light coming directly at him at about 25 to 30 miles an hour. And what I found very interesting about this is that, because I don't know how many of you have had it happen, but I certainly have had it happen. And in this case, some of the drivers that were sitting there honked. I mean, in that fraction of a second when they said, holy, you know, and they hit their horns. Apparently a number of them hit their horns, and she went by my friend, totally engrossed in some sort of texting. So she never saw him. She never responded to all those honks, and she just blew completely through the intersection with no response whatsoever to, actually, she could have killed either the pedestrian or my friend. And so it's just kind of not a wake-up call, but an indication of how oblivious our vehicles can be on our streets, even though on a place like High and 13th has had so much work by the city and the committee and everybody, you know, and still you're going, holy Toledo, you know, when someone blows right through a red light. So that's just my grim notes for today.
Well, thanks, Connie, and as always for highlighting these. And I'm guessing I'm guessing it was really 18th and High, which was the signalized intersection as opposed to 19th. Oh,
13th.
Oh, 13th and High, yeah. And I would say there was an incident in the news just today that someone was hit at 8th in Hilliard. And that was apparently very serious, was yes, and not a fatality as of the point where the article was published, and hopefully will not be. And we will be having an update on Vision Zero from Logan here in just a few minutes. So and find out how what's going on and some updates both on the data regarding crashes as well as updates to the Vision Zero plan. All right, we have no further public comment, so we can move into the rest of the agenda. First, I would entertain a motion to approve the June 2025 meeting summary notes. If you're like me, when I read it, it was like, that was 2 months ago. That's this is best I remember it. This is what happened. Alan?
There's a correction.
Okay.
My name is wrong. My last name is incorrect.
Oh, what does it say your last name?
It says it's Alan Dickman, who is a professor at Depot, but
Oh.
I don't know how his name got in there.
All
It's
right.
my name, so.
Would you like to move approval of the minutes with that change to represent, to reflect that it's Alan Hancock as opposed to Alan Dickman? Is there a second? Thanks. All in favor? All right,
Good
Thanks.
catch. Who did the second?
Ryan.
Right, thank you.
All right, and then next up, in fact, it is Logan to talk about the Vision Zero action plan update and fatal crash report, which is a grim topic, particularly with
Absolutely.
recent events.
Catherine, how do you want to do this? Do you want me to just like hover over here next to you, maybe? Sure, and I can just advance the slides if you don't mind. So as some of you probably know, Willow and I have been working on an update to our Vision Zero action plan. Our original action plan was adopted in 2019, but the data within the plan itself covered the 2007 to 2015 crash years. So every year ODOT publishes an official crash data set that is just like 1 year of crash history. So with the
Oh,
update
Logan,
that we're doing.
Maybe just in case someone here isn't familiar, just say what Vision Zero
Oh,
is.
yes, I'm sorry. If anyone doesn't know, Vision Zero is our program that's focused on reducing fatal and serious injury crashes. It includes both like data-oriented reporting on what our high crash networks are and crash statistics, and also, you know, a number of action items for what we're doing to drive down our fatal crash numbers. And this is the updated action plan that we've been working on. It covers the 2014 to 2022 time period. So we're refreshing the crash years to the most recent 9 years of crash data that we had at the time we were doing the analysis. And this is going to update all of the statistics in the plan. It's going to update our high crash network maps. In our original Vision Zero action plan, there was a desire to incorporate some equity content, but that just never happened at that point. So with this update, we're adding in some census data to look at how our high crash network overlays with various communities of concern. And then what this document doesn't change is any of the action items in the plan. So this is really just a data update. As with our prior action plan, one of the big themes in our updated action plan is that arterials are a really big issue for us. During this time frame, 87% of the fatal and serious injury crashes were on arterial roadways. And the most common types of locations to have these types of crashes were our fastest arterials, the 55-mile-per-hour plus arterials, which obviously includes things like Beltline and I-105, but it also includes some locations like the far west portions of West 11th, Northwest Expressway is 55 miles per hour. Some of like the more fringe areas of our arterials.
I know we're not supposed to ask, but these are all vehicle crashes as opposed to pedestrian, and
This includes all modes.
so anyone and everyone who had any kind of crash.
Mhm.
Okay. yeah.
Correct. Yes. And we know that pedestrians and bicycles and people riding motorcycles are disproportionately likely to be seriously injured or killed when crashes do occur. You can see here in the pie chart on the right, the portion of our overall fatal and serious injuries, the various modes are, in comparison to over here on the left, the number of overall crashes that they represent in the overall data set. Looking at some of the common crash factors that are coded to the crashes, there's a large number of options that responding law enforcement can check, like when they're filling out the crash report forms. This doesn't represent all of them. This is just pulling out some of the ones that are more commonly reported with our fatal and serious injury crashes. It's not surprising to see failure to yield be the most prominent one. That was the most prominent one last time as well. So we know that that's a really big contributing factor. Speeding can include both exceeding the posted speed limit and also driving too fast for conditions, whether that's weather conditions or even road surface conditions, like if there's a bunch of loose gravel on a roadway or something like that. Reckless and careless driving can be a lot of different types of behaviors, but I'm sure we can all imagine, texting while driving, a lot of road rage type behaviors are categorized as that. I want to mention this non-motorist illegally in roadway. I know that's a little bit of an awkward way of describing it. That's just how ODOT describes it in the crash data. But really that can represent a wide range of behaviors. I think a lot of incidents that are flagged that way are mid-block crossings. It's legal for pedestrians to cross in mid-block locations, but they are supposed to be yielding to vehicles in that instance. So if a crash happens and someone was crossing mid-block, I think a lot of times that does lead EPD to code that as the non-motorist illegally in roadway designation. But it can also describe a lot of unexpected behaviors, like somebody has climbed onto a freeway on-ramp and they're walking somewhere like that, or somebody is, doing donuts on a bicycle in the middle of Beltline, and just a lot of stuff that can end up in that category. And then I'll also mention disregard traffic signal, which is really red light running.
And failure to yield, is that you know, in the case of pedestrians and bicyclists, is that usually the driver failing to yield, or would that also code for a
It-
pedestrian or
It can
or
be, it
cyclist
could be
failing?
either. So for every crash that happens, it can have multiple factors coded to it.
Okay.
So it could be that crash has coded non-motorists illegally in roadway and failure to yield to describe like kind of a similar behavior that's being shown. Yes,
So
so
where do drugs and alcohol fit into this?
that is, we're gonna get into that. Don't worry, that's not necessarily discussed as like a factor. It is a factor, but it's like it's a different part of the crash reporting form. It's a different field. And we'll have some charts up in a minute related to that. Say the usage of safety equipment is some of the information included in the crash records. Seatbelt use overall, I think is pretty good. Most people use their seatbelts, they understand the value. That being said, you know, we do have some fatal crashes where someone wasn't wearing their seatbelt and they're ejected from the vehicle, and that contributes to worse crash outcomes. And then with helmet usage for people riding bikes, I know that helmet usage doesn't prevent crashes. Like it's obviously on the driver not to hit someone on a bicycle, but that being said, of the fatal and serious injury bike crashes that we had, 45% of them didn't include helmet use. And, you know, depending on the speed of the collision, maybe it wouldn't have made a difference, but for some of them, you know, maybe it would have helped a little bit. It's hard to say for sure. Now we're getting into alcohol and drugs. It's a really significant, contributing factor to our fatal crash numbers. During this time period, 68% of the fatal crashes involve drugs and alcohol. And when we get into the fatal crash report, which is looking at the past 3 years, even more recent data than this, just our past 3-year spike in fatalities that we've seen, it's even more prominent than what you're seeing here. Yeah, very, very big topic for us. And I'll go ahead and say, you know, I think a lot of people think of drug and alcohol use in fatal crashes mostly applying to people driving, but I'll just go ahead and say that a lot of fatal crashes we're seeing these days, especially pedestrian crashes, do involve someone who's walking, being impaired and being in a fatal crash. And that's not intended to sound like victim blaming. Because I authentically don't feel that way, but it is a challenge. That is a challenge that we're having in some locations more than others. And so I'll go ahead and call that out for you all. Digging into what the new high crash network maps look like. This is all modes shown together. We have our high crash corridors and high crash intersections. This is just to kind of show you the overall distribution. We're going to go mode by mode and talk about what's new. So when we're looking at our high crash network for people walking, this is the one that's actually changed the most. We have a number of new additions to the high crash network for people walking. Some of them are probably not surprising to folks, like Highway 99. We all know Highway 99 has been really challenging for pedestrian crashes in recent years. But yeah, lots of locations that have been added. And I'll remind folks that for each of the mode maps we're looking at, the math that decides what does and doesn't get shown on the high crash network is really, we looked at all of the fatal and serious injury crashes. And for bicycle and pedestrian involved crashes, we also pulled the level B minor injury crashes and weighted them in half. So it's kind of counting as like an extra half point to the total. And everything that is top 15 corridor is what ends up on the high crash network map. Hopefully that makes sense the way I described it. But so these are the top 15 for pedestrians during this time period. Flipping over to the high crash network for biking. This one is less changed from last time. The additions here were Garfield and Roosevelt. And flipping over to driving, also not super different from our last high crash network, but the new additions are Barger, 6th, and Washington. And a piece of feedback that Willow and I have gotten thus far that I think is really helpful is, we have these new high crash corridors and high crash intersections. And a piece of feedback we've gotten recently is, folks encouraging us to think about how we show the locations that have fallen off the list and how we discuss them within the Vision Zero action plan. Because a lot of the locations that have come off the list they're not all locations where we've built safety improvements. It's just, it might have been a circumstance where a particular corridor had a much worse crash year and it, kind of knocked something off the list. It doesn't necessarily mean we've addressed all of our concerns at those locations that were on the previous high crash network. And so we want to find a way to call that out in the action plan and recognize that there are still locations from the old high crash network that we're concerned about and want to make progress on.
Because you said it's the top 15, so they're always going to be 15.
Unless there's
Yeah.
a tie between corridors,
Yeah.
and then I've just gone ahead and showed them all.
Okay.
Yeah, and there are some that are more than 15 because the crash numbers matched for a few corridors. Yeah. The intersections are calculated in a little bit different of a way, which I know is confusing, and I apologize for that, but we're just matching our methodology from our last Vision Zero action plan. The high crash intersections, like the high crash network, we're looking at fatal and serious injury crashes. And then also for the bicycle and pedestrian involved crashes, we're factoring in the level B minor injuries. And we're counting them as half a point. And so anything that scores 3 or higher is included in the high crash intersections list. Everything that's new, I've highlighted in yellow because there are so many that are new. And I apologize for the little red line through. Someone pointed out to us that we listed Washington and 8th twice. But yeah, lots of new stuff on the high crash intersections list. Go ahead, Peter.
Is this the number of like fatal crashes or the number of fatalities?
Number of fatal crashes.
Okay, so if there are multiple fatalities in one crash, that counts as one.
Yes, that's true. But oftentimes, and we did it that way in the prior action plan too. I think the rationale was we didn't want to feel like we were potentially like double counting certain crashes, especially because like if there's 2 fatalities in a car, or like multiple fatalities, like some people felt like that would be like double counting or triple counting that crash. But that being said, we usually don't have multiple occupants, like experience fatalities in the same vehicle. It's not that it can't happen, it can happen.
Mhm.
It's just not as common.
Yeah.
So if we want to, let's see how much time we have. We could pause for questions if anyone has additional questions about the action plan update before we dig into the fatal crash report a bit.
And we have lots of time because
Yeah.
there wasn't much public comment and so forth, so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, so questions? Beyond, we've been kind of been asking them as you've gone along. Are you going to provide any graph showing just the overall change in volume of, like, we're aware that it's gone up instead of down, which is the goal for Vision Zero, but do you have any slides that show that change either for active
I
transportation use?
Actually do with the fatal crash report slides.
Okay,
So
So it's coming
let's just, it's okay for us to skip ahead a little and talk
Okay.
about that. I just happen to have in the fatal crash report this chart that looks back over 10 years of data. And you can just go ahead and see, we've experienced a really dramatic increase. At the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of communities saw their fatal crash numbers go up like right away. We seem to have a little bit of a delayed effect for one reason or another. And it seems like, it went up in 2021, but it wasn't like unprecedented. It felt like in 2022 is really when things started really exploding. And 2022 and 2023, I think we both had 14 fatal crashes within the Eugene urban growth boundary. And then in 2024, it was 22 in the Eugene urban growth boundary. And some years, prior, it was more normal for us to have like 5 or 6 in a given year. So a really dramatic increase. And we can, as we talk about the fatal crash report, we can talk about what's feeding into that. But before we do, any other questions about the action plan?
Well, my understanding is that these figures are pretty consistent with other communities across the country. Is that right?
I would say so. Yeah, we see a lot of similar themes here as other communities.
And is Lane County keeping track of countywide statistics as well?
I don't know too much about the specifics of this project they're working on, but they're working on their like county-wide safety analysis, looking specifically at county streets right now. They got a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant for that, and they're having a consultant develop that for them at the moment. When I do our crash data analysis, I include everything within the urban growth boundary area, including county streets, because as I'm sure many of us know, there's that patchwork of city and county up in the River Road, Santa Clara areas. And I think from a planning perspective, it just makes sense for us to think of it more holistically.
How does this action plan lead to like changes in policy or infrastructure?
I think that the high crash network is helpful for identifying where we want to do future infrastructure projects. It's also really helpful reinforcement for our grant applications. Because getting grant funding is really competitive in most cases, and having a adopted document like this that says like, hey, this location is a safety priority for us is a really helpful thing to have in our back pocket to like, help put into those applications.
And the plan seems to be, I mean, as presented here, is an identification of the problem areas, but doesn't go as far as what the specific solutions are.
Yeah, the action items that exist in the Vision Zero action plan right now are not infrastructure projects. They are more programmatic in nature. And, there's certain action items that are more about like our communications practices. There's some action items that are things like, we're gonna explore red light camera pilot program. But you are correct that we don't identify specific infrastructure projects with this. And we do think that, like I've said previously, we're thinking of this update as being a data-oriented update. But the idea is the next one that we do, which is maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, we want to do a more comprehensive update that does revisit the action items and perhaps revisits the methodology that we're using to develop the high crash networks. It's an opportunity to kind of do a larger reset versus this, which is really trying to get more recent crash data into our document. And also, one of the motivating factors in this is staying eligible for future grants. The federal Safe Streets and Roads for All grant is basically the federal kind of Vision Zero oriented grant program. And our existing action plan is now old enough where it's been phased out as being a qualifying action plan. So that kind of limits what we can apply for until we do an update. So this is kind of the interim, like data-oriented update, and then we'll come back and do a more robust one.
So is there any, so there are these programmatic action items. Has there been any evaluation as to whether any of those have been, to what degree they've been implemented and whether or not they worked? I mean, by judging by the stats, they aren't working.
Yeah, we some of them have been implemented, some of them haven't. But I think you are right that there are some that are probably more impactful than others. So I think that when we do the next update, I think that there is a really good opportunity to refine some of the ones that are a little bit that could benefit from some work, and add additional stuff that isn't currently in the Vision Zero plan.
Thanks. All right.
If we want to get into the fatal crash report now, this is a document that is kind as I mentioned before, the action plan covers up to 2022. And this is looking at the more recent spike that we've seen over the last few years. I will say a little bit of a disclaimer, everything that's shown for 2024 is considered preliminary data. The ODOT crash data set that I've referenced that gets like annually published runs 2 years behind. But ODOT has implemented more recent measures to publish preliminary data for fatal crashes, like in the interim, like in the more near term. And so that's helped us compile this report. Looking through some of what's in here. This is a different way of looking at the same data over here. You can kind of see how fatal crashes for peds and also fatal crashes for people driving have seen the most significant increases, particularly the pedestrians. 2023, we saw more fatal bike crashes than we typically do, but it doesn't seem like we're seeing the same spike as with the crashes involving people walking. So that's at least a bit of a relief. I mean, one's too many, but that is what we've seen so far through 2024. To give you kind of a high level idea of like the distribution of these incidents throughout town, they're pretty spread out. So I'll just kind of pause here for a second and give you an opportunity to take it in because I know there are quite a few. As some of you are probably seeing and noting, Highway 99 has been a big problem for us in recent years, especially for pedestrian involved crashes. Talking about some of the characteristics of the locations where we've seen these crashes. Once again, arterials are a really big theme, which is something we talked about with the Vision Zero Action Plan update, and that continues to be true for this 2022 to 2024 data chunk. And once again, high-speed roadways are particularly prominent. I think that some people are surprised to see such a large number of the pedestrian-involved crashes being on that 55 mph plus category. And like I said, some of that is not just necessarily on freeways, but also Northwest Expressways, 55, portions of West 11th, like as you get really far west in the UGB area are 55. So that's something that we're seeing.
Where was the one bicycle incident on a 25 mph?
On it, with the one on a 25.
Do you know?
Trying to, we can reverse engineer this. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, if you don't know offhand, I was just curious if you happen to know offhand. But,
Off the
yeah,
top of my head, I would need to double check.
no worries.
The most common type of location are straight roadway segments. So we're not necessarily talking as much about curves, which I think surprises some folks. Intersections are also obviously of concern, but don't make up as many as just those kind of more straight shots that people are driving a bit faster on. And that kind of matches up with a lot of these locations being on arterials. You know, our arterials are generally pretty straight throughways. And just kind of one interesting thing that's showing up in the numbers, a lot of the driver and motorcyclist involved collisions involved roadway departure, which is normally thought of as being a bit more of like a rural crash type. You know, people on a rural road, there's a curve in the road, they go off the road. And so it's interesting to see so many of the fatal crashes involving drivers and motorcyclists being about people leaving the roadway, crashing into something like a traffic signal or a utility pole or a tree. So that's an interesting thing that's showing up. Let's talk about drugs and alcohol again. During this time period, it was also a really significant contributing factor. This chart over here on the left is not intended to represent which party was impaired. It's just whether impairment was involved, depending on what modes were affected by the crash. So I'll go ahead and pause there. Yeah, really impactful, really impactful. Impactful for everyone, but also especially for the the fatal crashes involving people walking and biking. You all can see it's a really significant contributing factor.
All of the bicycle ones.
And like I said, 2024 data is still technically preliminary, so there's a small chance that maybe something will get adjusted, but I don't think that that's likely. Not to end on such a dark note, but those are the slides that I have for the fatal crash report. We can talk through any of those topics in more detail. I think we have time for that. Yeah.
Has there been an increase in the number of vehicles on the road in this time period or any other contributing factors?
Not if we have had an increase in travel volumes, not to the extent that would make up for such a significant increase in our fatalities. Yeah, I think on an overall like big picture scale, if I had to just kind of like throw out some of my theories for why we're seeing such a big increase, people are speeding like even more so than they were before the pandemic, for instance. So vehicle speeds are a really big contributing factor. As a lot of us know, vehicle manufacturers have increasingly made cars and trucks bigger. And so they're heavier. And so there's more momentum when a crash does occur. And that's more likely to kill or seriously injure somebody. I think another big factor that I think is impactful in all of this is our housing crisis is kind of intersecting with our traffic safety crisis, especially for pedestrian involved crashes. It's it's hard to like definitively quantitatively say what portion of the folks affected were unhoused community members. Because housing status isn't formally recorded as a data point on the crash report forms. But I will say, just talking with EPD about these incidents, a lot of folks who are affected by the pedestrian crash increase are unhoused community members. And, you can even see on here, like a lot of them are, Highway 99, around service centers and social service providers and housing facilities that are helping house those folks temporarily. And so that's a big, kind of intersection of two societal issues we're having. And then on top of that, I think that our community's challenges with substance use and addiction are contributing as well. And I think that, I'm not a public health professional, but I think that it stands to reason that also probably got worse during the pandemic and the shutdown and everybody's isolated. And so that's another kind of intersection between our traffic safety issues and like a broader societal challenge that we're having.
All three of those things you mentioned are notably things that transportation planners don't really address.
Yeah.
It's law enforcement or it's housing community or, it's tough.
It is really challenging. Yeah, I think that something that I am looking forward to, as some of you've probably heard, Jody, who's not here tonight, Jody Trendler, she is going to be leading a corridor study for both River Road and Highway 99, but I think the Highway 99 one in particular is a great opportunity to do community engagement that is targeted to the social service providers on Highway 99. I think that's a really great opportunity for us to try to work on some of those issues, however we can. It's not to say that's the only option. We, every year, every fall, we do our BC, I think we're calling it BC, C and Be Seen this year. It used to be called Be Safe, Be Seen, where we give away a bunch of bike lights, reflective materials. We give away high visibility beanies with like reflector woven in the fabric. And we target a lot of the social service providers that are serving unhoused community members to like give to their clientele. And we distributed materials to those providers on Highway 99 last year, and we'll do it again this year. And that's not gonna fix the problem necessarily, but it's one small thing that we're doing right now. And yeah, and I think especially in areas where we're seeing those like hotspots of pedestrian related crashes involving unhoused community members, like on Highway 99. Something like lighting upgrades is still a great option, like even, even in unpredictable circumstances, better lighting is always going to help. It's never going to hurt. Our paving project that one of our engineers is kind of designing right now was already gonna do LED upgrades on Highway 99. And it sounds like we've come to the collective decision that we're gonna do brighter than standard lighting there to help with this issue. So hopefully that is something that helps a bit,
Yeah, have you seen across the data any correlation with times of days and crashes? I'd seen a presentation a few meetings back talking about time of day and crashes.
Time of day, yeah, I don't have a slide for that, but yes, darkness is an overrepresented factor. And it's most impactful for people who are walking and people who are biking, which isn't necessarily a surprise, yeah.
All right, any other questions?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Is age collected as like a
Age,
factor?
it
Just-
is. Catherine, would it be too inconvenient if I had you open up the fatal crash report?
I think I can do it.
Okay, it's okay to tell me no if it's gonna
No,
like
I haven't.
mess with your flow. Yeah, so 8 for the fatal crash report. I think we have age, if you just like scroll,
The particular graph you're looking for.
yes. There we go.
This one?
Let's see, yes, age data. So, yeah, some people would expect like a really significant representation for older folks or younger folks, but at least with the fatal crashes during this 3-year period, looks like 20% of them were 65 or older, and thankfully, we didn't have too many affecting minors. Obviously, any year is too many, but during this time period, 4% were under the age of 18. And yeah, the only demographic data I can pull from the source I used for this is age, sex. Oh, and I can't speak to housing status officially, so that's just something I call out, but it's-
75%.
yeah, yeah. A lot of the crash victims were male. Yeah.
For housing status, they like, when you said when you talk to EPD, they tell you that like it's a higher factor, but is there anywhere that they write
Yeah.
notes about it? Like, do they really just? Know?
So it's not super reliable to do it this way, but there is an address line in the crash report form. And there are some instances where people will make a note of it in that line, in that part of the form, but a lot of times they will write, like, if somebody is living at like a rehab facility, they'll write the address for the rehab facility or the temporary housing facility, or some people even have like a last known address on their driver's license, and that will end up in the form. So there was a time period where we thought we might be able to track it that way, and it just didn't end up working out very well for us. I think at least the only city I'm aware of that reports on this is actually Portland. And I asked them about it recently, and they have created, I know this sounds like so horribly bureaucratic, they created a whole separate form to just track the housing status when a crash happens, and the Portland Police Bureau folks like fill out that whole separate form on like the housing status. So maybe that's something that we can do at some point, but we just don't have like historic data that we can look back on. Yeah.
I almost wonder if it. I mean, I know it matters, like that it's happening to them, but like, what would it show? Just that.
it's just it's a theme and
Yeah.
it's a concern and it's getting worse. Yeah.
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 Just imagining public reaction that it. People tend to not take it as seriously if it's.
Yeah, I think that, you know, for me, like as someone who's working on these issues, when I think about like the question of like why it matters, I think about like the heightened vulnerability of like that demographic, because they spend so much time in closer proximity to the roadway than the average person. And then I also think about because we talked about like the social service provider sites, but aside from the social service provider sites, then you like think about like other types of destinations like bottle drop centers, or like areas where we know we're having a lot of urban camping. And which is also tricky because that can move around, and then it's like, how do you plan infrastructure improvements around like where, you know, urban camping is moving around? But yeah, so that's kind of my takeaway for like how that information could or couldn't be useful.
Is
Yeah.
that how Portland uses it? Like,
I would need to ask them more about that.
could be interesting.
Logan, is there, I mean, to wind this up, is there, my sense is that the reason this has been done is for grant eligibility, you know, the reason it's been done at this time.
For the action plan update, yeah, this
yeah.
is just for the fatal crash reports information.
Right,
Yeah.
but is there any, you know, this is obviously, you know, a big concern for the folks who are part of ATC. I mean, is there anything that we could or should be doing or asking for that can help move us to a point where there's fewer fatal and serious crashes? I mean, how can we put more action in the action plan?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Well, I suppose like a question, you know, I'm having in response to that is there a particular desire to engage in a way that you aren't already engaging? Like I know you guys have subcommittees and at least I know you guys still have an infrastructure subcommittee, right?
Yes, we call it capital projects
Yeah,
now.
I mean,
Yes.
maybe there's an opportunity to like coordinate more with the capital project subcommittee on high crash corridors.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Anything less? Yeah, okay.
I see a hand back there.
Oh,
So, a comment that I have, thinking about the people involved and the corridors involved. And where there are dusk to dawn sleep sites for homeless people, where the service center is. And knowing that a lot of those people are using drugs, a lot. It's a huge problem. So if I was gonna offer a suggestion to reduce the fatality, would be more drug treatment and housing.
Mhm.
You're taking another outside one.
yeah, well, since we have time, we can do that. Yes, normally we can't, but yes, we do have a couple minutes.
I was waiting to hear someone, as a person who bicycles through the downtown, also on alleys and all over the place. I see a lot of what I assume, rather than being on meth or heroin or whatever, are actually mentally ill persons that are dancing through the roadways, going all over the place. Now, I can't guarantee that they're not self-medicating on something, but there is obviously some serious mental illness going on, and I see those persons all over, meandering through roadways, alleyways, on, you know, 6th, 7th, I mean, I see them all over, and so I know that's not, again, something that can be dealt with here, but it's a reality for even any of the drivers in town, that they see people meandering all over the roadway, whether they're on something or that's just where their head is at that moment. So that's a tremendous increase in the exposed or vulnerable mentally ill persons we have in our community too.
All right, one last thing from Sue, and then
Regulation, I mean, could you create something like a school zone around something like that section of Highway 99 where,
Oh,
you know,
boy.
it's,
Interesting.
A
I,
Social services zone.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that would be nice. There isn't like a mechanism like that in place right now that we
I
can,
mean, 'cause
that
you
we can
think
tap
drivers would
into.
appreciate something, to remind
Yeah,
them,
yeah.
watch out.
I mean, we
See
can
that one, you
always-
don't want to cross the road.
We can always, so for anyone who doesn't know, the way that speed limit setting, happens in Oregon is ODOT regulates all speed limits regardless of whether we own the roadway. But we, as the roadway authority, can request a speed zone investigation from ODOT. And then they do a very specific methodology for determining what the recommended speed limit is there. So we always have the option of, if we feel like a speed limit is not appropriate for a particular location, we can ask for a speed zone investigation. I will say that ODOT has a really limited number of staff doing those. And so we try to be mindful about the number of requests we put in a given year, because if we overload them, it's just, we're not gonna get results back. And so, but that is an option we can consider in some locations, yeah. And we know what the methodology is, so we oftentimes can have kind of an informed feeling on whether a location is likely or unlikely to qualify for a reduction.
Does the methodology include fatal crashes?
So it involves, looking at the land use so these days it involves a combination of looking at how fast vehicles are moving. Like they'll go out and they won't even do the hose counter, so they'll go out with like a radar LiDAR gun themselves, and they'll like take data on the free moving speed of traffic. And these days they factor in like the surrounding like land use context as well, so that's something that we have going for us. I think that crash history is a consideration in the methodology, but it's not necessarily the primary one.
Well, we should wind it up there. Logan, thanks so much for being here and bringing us up to speed with, albeit sad statistics.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
on our agenda, we next have a quick 5-minute break before picking up with the Oakway Protected Bikeway coming up next. So take 5 and
Thanks, Catherine.
be back promptly.
Can you see if there's some?
Oh, it was me.
Is
It
there-
was me.
oh, okay. Oh, no.
Somebody left that.
I'm glad you got let in, I forgot to check the.
No worries.
Chat.
11:10.
I was just watching it from downstairs on my phone.
And packets. I brought one.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, so you can have the notification pop up.
I showed the effective.
Well, we have to Tuesday. Oh, we have shots on Tuesday.
What we're doing is for section 7, we're already gonna do video.
We did not have.
At like 10. And so what we're doing is.
Oh, perfect, okay. Yeah, and it worked out because, I was able to talk to them.
We're gonna use that, we're gonna together. It's gonna bring their weekend. I want to do and also.
Jump on that a little bit. I'm hoping some folks can show up for the access meeting, so we can like all discuss it together. And that'll be September 4th. I'll tell the whole agency about that.
How are you guys?
But I kind of like.
What's that?
How's your summer been so far? Yeah, working together to improve connections between.
I don't know. They're going to be gone for
The thing that they're
most
most
of
interested
the
in,
fall.
obviously, like signage and.
Starting with a long cycle trip.
Really?
But I also.
So,
Yeah,
that's,
especially in like the.
Which, so then the reason this is a response to your question, because, theoretically, I was gonna do biking in preparation for that. Instead, I've been struggling to overcome my back injury. It's been trying to just scuttle the whole trip, but, I think we're gonna be close enough. I'm
Yeah.
gonna try.
So, The other.
So that's why they've been preoccupying me for the last,
Is,
3 or 4
the other piece
absorbing like something. Yes, ultimately.
They're in the biggest one.
Just this, well, I guess the section from roughly,
Go striping.
down to Carl's.
To provide.
Yeah, so part of that really seems distraction that you see all the pictures from the rest is just kind of where we have to go through. Down in Carl's room, for the lights there.
You get approval on this.
Successful, right?
Interested in that?
What that says to me is that.
Yeah.
That's exciting. I'll put some over here in July.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we went to the.
Oh.
I met a couple of that was riding from. Like just by Salzburg. So they went like all the way across southern.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah,
I used to
oh,
live.
that's cool. We hope to be doing something similar in, the next.
Oh, perfect.
So,
Yeah, are you on the subject?
yeah,
The,
it's,
And it said it was all like bikeways.
Yeah.
That's a weird little bit, the country roads, and then back on bike.
well, our experience in Germany is they've got a lot of, it's very densely settled, but the settlements
Yeah,
are.
if there's more things you guys want.
Don't let you go into the agricultural land on a very intensive process. And then, but they have like these just little roads to the agricultural land. Where cars are.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is very cool. And we wish we had something similar here.
Big Bear.
It's like getting to I-5 bridge.
All right, everyone, let's reconvene. Hopefully snacks and water and everything is gonna be.
Yeah, good one.
All right. Thanks again, Logan. All right. So last year we spent some time chatting and even doing a field trip out to the Oakway Protected Bikeway with Catherine. I think part of the reason Catherine ended up getting the penchant for Willow here was that was ready to talk to us about what's happened since. Catherine? Oakway, the floor is yours.
Thanks. You'll actually have me for a couple topics here, but we'll start with Oakway, then we'll talk about Lincoln Street, and then we'll talk about Polk Street. I might not have as much to share on Oakway as you're hoping for, but we can get into it. A little bit of background on Oakway. Protected bikeways on Oakway are in our transportation system plan, our TSP, between Coburg Road and Calyoung Road. In 2020, the Metropolitan Planning Organization funding cycle set aside money for Oakway protected bike lanes. Originally, construction was scheduled for 2026. It'll likely be pushed to 2027. But more recently, the city contracted with Mobicon, who is a kind of a Dutch cycling specialty consulting firm, to help develop preferred alternatives and explore different street kind of organization on Oakway, Calyoung, and Willackenzie, in recognition that all three of those streets will be connected as protected bikeways. And you can't really see it because I haven't zoomed over it, but Calyoung protected bikeways are scheduled for 2029, and that was through the latest street bond. And then Willackenzie protected bikeways are in the TSP, not yet funded, but eventually they'll all connect. So there's reason to look at them all in coordination. So what is Mobicon doing? I mentioned this a little earlier, but they're working on design option memos for each of those three streets, as well as kind of an overarching memo looking at all three in consideration. And they're exploring those multiple street configurations and really ranking them against both like Dutch criteria as well as criteria provided by the city. Included in those are intersections. There's a handful of key intersections along these three streets. I'm looking at both kind of short-term what we can do with limited funding, and then longer term, if we're really repouring curves, et cetera, what we can do. I will say MobiCon has completed their Oakway memo and are working on Cal Young and Willakenzie. But ideally, once these memos are completed, they're really a starting point for us to go do engagement. And the plan right now is to do engagement on Oakway and Cal Young at the same time.
Catherine, just real quickly, so Cal Young, we're only talking about the stretch of Cal Young between Oakway and Willakenzie, right? Not all of Cal
Correct.
Young's, okay.
Yeah, that little connected piece. And I at first was not sure about the value of bringing MobiCon on, but I've really enjoyed working with them and learning from them and how they've kind of laid out options. So keep going. I mentioned this, maybe I didn't mention this, but hopefully engagement will start this fall with the community around Oakway. And so here's the next few slides are from MobiCon's Oakway memo. These are examples of the Dutch design principles and additional criteria provided by the city to rank kind of the different design options that we were looking at. So you see things like safety, comfort, directness, as well as transit support, stormwater management and level of stress at intersections. Just a snapshot of the different things we're considering when we're ranking these options. These were the 4 options for Oakway that MobiCon considered. Right, it's a mix of taking away the center turn lane or taking away the parking lane, or both in some cases. I won't spend too long on this. You notice, worth calling out though, is we did look at a bi-directional option, and I see that as us like really doing our homework and being thorough in what we're exploring. This is a snapshot of the Coburn Oakway intersection. And kind of, it's small for you guys, but just kind of the work product that MobiCon is producing. So a quick build, directional option, and then 2 here is more reconstruction if we're really redoing a lot of the concrete down there. And then also a bi-directional option. And that's all I have for Oakway slash Cal Young slash Willakenzie. That we're still in the works with MobiCon. Hopefully engagement will start more broadly this fall. It's been a long time coming, as Charlie mentioned. We had our right about like last year. So, well, but questions or comments?
This may be more of a comment than a question, and it's kind of just an idea percolating from what we were talking about with Vision Zero and the sizes of cars. And working with the European consultation group and knowing that the size of vehicles there is not increasing at the same rate, it's just kind of, I'm sure everyone is already thinking about this, but maybe just an additional comment of keeping in consideration as the car size grows in your design. And that maybe when consulting with another entity, they may not have that same phenomenon in their work.
They do have, so MobiCon originated overseas, but they do have US offices. So we're actually working with their Portland office.
Perfect.
With a guy named Nick Falbo, who used to work for, I think it was Peabody, and is like familiar with Meeting. So he's got good contacts, but that's a really good point. Other questions?
Could you back up to the slide where they, where they're the different alternatives?
Yes.
I just wanted to peer at that for a second, and then. And so then if you go back one more to where they were, evaluating. So how influential do you think that evaluation is? Because there's still a lot of work to be done before figuring out. Which of those, because I mean, looking at this, it seems pretty clear. Option 2 looks great.
Yeah, option 2, I think, is where we've landed, right, internally as a city. That would be my preference. I think all of these in some way are viable, and that's what we get to test with the community. And see where they land on things.
And then flip back to the, and then I'll get to, and then we'll take Angie's
That's fine.
question, but so
Mhm.
option 2 is. Basically a protected bike lane on each side.
So this is where, yeah, we take away the center turn lane and the parking lane. We have a really big buffer here. And what's harder to see in these side images is how that design might shift as you go through the segment. There could be areas where we have like in-ground planters and maybe there's a parking bay or 2 for that delivery vehicle, et cetera. But maintaining this is almost like a flex space. And again, being responsive to the community and the neighborhood there and seeing if we can't balance some things in that area would be an option.
Yeah, 7 foot widths. How big are the widths on the Oakway or the 24th protected bikeway proposed to be?
Those are skinnier, much
Right.
skinnier, because we only had parking on one side and
Right.
there was no center turn lane.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it was like just like 2 or 3 feet, right? So 7 feet, that's
Yeah.
substantial.
Mhm.
Angie?
In the last slide, there are like criteria. What is the difference between comfort and safety? Or like when they were deciding, because I know like when I'm looking at it, it's kind of strange that comfort could be like a full circle and the safety would be like a quarter.
I would have to look through the report to see, because they do elaborate on each of these, but like safety and comfort. So I think like for the directional comfort might be you're able to ride side by side with someone or pass really easily. Something of that nature. Whereas safety, I think here, there's also like it might be more safe, right, to ride against a buffer as opposed to a parking lane, something of that nature. We can look at it when you're in office next if you want.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other, right?
The last slide with the intersection.
This one.
I was just curious, it looks like, I'm also quite a ways from the screen, but it looks like there's not a lot of thought yet on crossing Coburg with the bike lanes.
Like
Yeah,
this.
because I know from personal experience commuting home that way, that's like the worst spot on Oakway is trying to get across Coburg and across the intersection, and you're coming along and it's a quick 90-degree turn and trying to get across there. So I was wondering if they're going to put much thought into that, or if there's going to be any options for that.
So are you talking about like a 90-degree turn, like kind of at this
Right
pork
there, yeah.
chop? Yeah.
Usually I end up, especially if I have I have a little travoy trailer sometimes.
Okay.
Making a quick turn is not possible, so it's usually I end up doing like a 90-degree, like a big loop around to get around that triangle there. So I was just wondering if they were looking at possibilities for making that improved.
I think that might be a design detail a little too in-depth for this, but it for like these two, but it's something that we would want to consider when we dive a little deeper into what it could look like. Because right now it's like cobblestone bricky kind of stuff
Yeah.
out there, right? It's real awkward.
But you feel very, very sketchy, very, very vulnerable, because you're like, I'm sitting in the middle of an off-ramp right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think when we did the field trip, we spent a lot of time talking about the pork chop and the problems with that this whole intersection is like the biggest problem, I think, in this entire project is how do you actually get people onto and off of the protected bikeways on Oakway, because the options on at this intersection are so poor. And yeah. All right, we ready to move on to Lincoln Street? Thanks, Catherine, for that update, and look forward to more and what happens at Cal Young and Willie Kenzie's.
It'll be interesting. Okay, so with that, we'll touch into Lincoln. We're doing well on time. Okay, so background on Lincoln. This is a two-way protected bikeway kind of on the west side of downtown between 13th and 5th. So back in 2019, staff submitted an ODOT grant application for this bikeway. Community engagement for the project began in 2023 to really solidify the design and get community buy-in. Since then, we are working with another consultant firm, an engineering firm called Parametrics, to develop the engineering plan set for Lincoln, and we go through a 30, 60, 90 plan set kind of process where each plan gets more detailed and all the city teams are able to provide feedback at each point. So we just released the 90% plans, which means they should be really close to done. And then construction will probably start no sooner than March 2026. So just an idea of when that might happen, which is next year, actually, which is close for our timelines. But I have a couple key things I want to share with you guys. The first of which is the traffic separator. So the protection piece we're using is this type B from ODOT, and I'll blow this up on the next slide. Oh, sorry, type A, excuse me. Which is concrete. It will likely get extruded in place over dowels, which is something I learned today. I thought they just brought them in and set them down. That's not how it works. But about 2 inches high, a minimum of 16 inches wide. I'm pretty sure this is what we have out on Amazon Parkway on the protected bikeway there. But I have a better picture. This is Silver Lane up in the River Road area. And in this case, they're actually using these as traffic separators and not as bike lane protectors. But just a quick view of what they look like on the ground relative to some cars over here.
Those are very dirty right now and very hard to see when it's dark.
Because
I took a left on that road 2 days ago. Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. Were there reflectors there? No,
It's
they're
covered
probably
in dirt.
sheared off.
Yeah.
One thing we are considering is kind of the noses of these protectors tend to get run over, is what we've seen along High Street and 13th, even when they're concrete and keyed in. So we're looking at doing more like modular type of material at the noses of the intersections and the alleys. It could look something like this, or like the ends of these Zikla products that are kind of curved. That's still to be determined. I don't love the way these look. I think we might get some aesthetic pushback from our downtown folks. But it's a compromise.
Wait, so what's the goal? So people are running into them, and so the goal for something like this would be how to change that?
So instead of people running into the concrete and smashing it up and concrete kind of bits going everywhere, these would not smash up if a car ran into them. They'd be a little more durable and more easily to replace than a concrete curb that's like extruded on site.
Okay.
Still something we're working out, but there's interest in trying something like this. A couple other things that I think are worth noting for the ATC is we're not planning any bollards with this design. So along High, if you guys remember, there's those green centerline bollards. Our street sweeping team really doesn't like those. It makes it hard for them to get in there and sweep stuff. The pro is that it keeps cars out. Again, a balancing act. So instead, what we're planning on doing is having a big block of green colorant right on that north side of every intersection where a car is more likely to turn into the bike lane. Just kind of as a, hey, this is different, you shouldn't be here. Notification. Some other things, we do have a bike on-ramp now on the south side of 13th. That will swing you onto the sidewalk. And this is the raised crossing at 13th and Lincoln. So instead of just kind of dropping you off, if you are maybe new in town and don't realize the bike lane drops there, hopefully this drops you off into the sidewalk instead of just further east on 13th in the vehicle travel lane. One thing to note is there is a tree here that's going to be removed with this plan set to make room for the wider sidewalk. Other things, we have a couple curb extensions that made it into the plans. These were in the plans and then out of the plans because of budget and have now been brought back into the plan, because the separator is more cost effective than say what's on 13th. So 12th and Lincoln curb extensions here, and then Lincoln and Broadway curb extensions here. And we're oriented north is up in these images. Maybe I can zoom out a little bit. Any questions so far?
So I know a portion of Lincoln, if I'm thinking of the right place, is bi-directional. Will all of Lincoln be one way in this plan?
So right now, Lincoln between 13th and 11th is two-way for cars, and it'll just be one way for cars after this. That's. All right, 5th and Lincoln. This is where we're at a 90% plan set, but there's some things that are still very sticky. We had a conversation about this just earlier today. What's here is what's in the 90% plan set, and it includes a four-way stop and kind of a mini roundabout within the four-way stop and a nub of a two-way protected bikeway and all these weird things. And when we had a staff meeting about it, no one really liked this. No one felt really comfortable with it. And so where we're at now is we're just gonna make it a four-way stop and watch and see how people use it, and then go in and make changes as needed. So I didn't want to spend too much time explaining what was on the screen, because right now I think we're pulling back from that and gonna keep it simple to begin with. Which maybe is just kicking the can down the road, but I think we might be more informed when we pick that can back up. We shall see. But still a four-way stop, so slowing everyone down. Some more good news, there is a new sign in the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control. It looks like this. Which is like the sign we've been waiting for, I've been waiting for, because you can mount it under stop signs and yield signs. The new MUTCD has not formally been adopted by the state of Oregon, but we think it will be by the time Lincoln goes to construction. So the plans are spec'd to have these signs, and they're mounted specifically under stop and yield signs, where there's a counterflow or two-way bike facility that has an approach that is counter to the customary scanning behavior of a motorist at that location. So I would love to see these on Lincoln, but also High and 13th and any of our other two-way protected signs and paths.
So you'll be able to go retrofit High Street with them.
Probably. So here's an example of 12th and High. There's a lot in here. And these are our current signs we use to indicate two-way traffic. These are custom signs the city makes, so they're expensive and kind of a pain. But the biggest issue I've seen with these is it's hard to find a place to put them where drivers will see them. Sometimes they're near side right here, sometimes they're far side over here. But you're competing with other signs and the placement is just unintuitive at times. So here's what it could look like in the future. Where we just have a two-way bicycle cross traffic signs mounted under the stop signs.
I think that'll be particularly good because people will notice the anomaly in their stop sign and
Exactly.
you know,
Hopefully they will. I'm sure people will still, some people will be oblivious, but it's better than I think what we have. Some other things that we were able to add into this project, which I was delighted by, are some lighting upgrades. I went and walked this section, and the northern section of Lincoln, which is on the left side, this is 5th to Broadway, is pretty well lit up until 5th. But the southern section from Broadway to 13th gets pretty dark. There's some big trees along here too. And so upgrading some of our existing high pressure sodium lights to LED, and then a couple new poles and new lights. There's a couple existing eWeb power poles where we can just hang a new mast arm with a light on there. And it looks like we should be able to get all of these. I don't totally believe that, But they are prioritized, so we'll see what we can do. So some of my outstanding concerns, as I mentioned, are that protection piece. It's not quite as modular as we would like. I worry about trash trucks smashing things up. So looking into those rubber noses. And then Fifth and Lincoln, again, we'll need to watch it and see how people use it and be ready to make changes. That's another worry of mine, is that when the time comes, it'll be difficult to actually get a contract and get it all done, as opposed to bundling it with this larger construction project, which we know will happen. So next steps, continuing to refine that engineering plan with the idea that it goes to ODOT for review in October of this year. And then pending ODOT giving us the thumbs up, construction in the next year. Questions or comments on Lincoln?
The last question that I have, does this plan end at the train tracks or at that intersection with Fifth?
At the intersection with Fifth. Yeah, the train tracks are just a little more north, a couple blocks.
Other questions?
So, with the, having the block of paint at the intersections, can that paint be treated in such a way that it won't be slippery when wet and making a turn?
I think it's supposed to have anti-skid in it already, because like we use it in our crosswalks and stuff.
Okay.
But I can share that with Sean. and just,
Some of the
like,
bike lane lines can be pretty slippery.
Yeah. I think they can put like a little glass beads or something they can put in there and make it stickier. Yeah.
Look, there's glass all over the, no,
Okay,
it's just
okay,
the paint.
they're just shiny.
And the other thing is, can the rubber noses, if you put them at the intersections, be made to be pretty like punishing if someone hits it? Like just give them a little jolt, and say like, don't do that. I'm just thinking of like the red curve that's famous on, was it Irving? Right now,
Yeah,
that like
curve.
people are just kind of ignoring. Like,
The Zikla ones in that picture, I think are like 4 or 5 inches tall. So
Okay.
like they're up there. Definitely they're taller than the concrete we're talking
Okay.
about.
Yeah.
Great work.
Yeah.
Glad to see this moving forward,
Nice.
and looking forward to biking.
I have one more thing to talk about though. I'm not done.
Oh,
yet.
yeah,
Yeah.
you do? It's not on the, oh, Polk parking
I
counts.
know.
Oh, yes.
Find it. It's just
Right.
a few more slides, and some handouts.
Oh, yeah.
But Polk Street parking counts. So we are in the process of gathering on-street parking counts to inform plans for Polk, from 2nd to 18th. Very, very early planning stages. But we're looking for counts on Polk all times of day, all days of the week, as well as side streets, 1 block in either direction. If you look on a map, that's actually a huge area to take parking counts for,
Yeah.
as a couple of you know, actually. So we've divided it into 3 sections to hopefully make it more digestible. If you do start a count in a section, it's most helpful for us to do the whole section just when we go and do the tallies and then math on the back end. And gold stars to Sue, Peter, and Willow for already doing a couple of counts. I do have already printed out sheets here. If anyone wants to take them, I'll leave them at the back table. But there's a north sheet with Polk on one side, side streets on the other, like a central section street, and then like a south section street. So choose your favorite. And then if these can be returned to me or to Willow, or entered online. Let's see.
How long are you gonna do the survey?
I think we'll do counts until, I think 40-ish counts is generally what we look for. It kind of depends. There's some construction going on 11th, so it's maybe a little different right now. than it would be. But I'd like to see at least 40 counts. It's a
So that
great
might be a
question,
while,
Ellen.
might be another month or two.
At least, I think at least another month or two.
How much time do you have to spend at the intersection to get the counts?
So these are just on-street parking counts, not,
It takes maybe a half hour to do the.
Okay.
sections out there.
okay.
So it
Thanks,
involves
Sue.
basically. Doing a back and forth, go up a block, go back and forth, go up a block, go back and forth.
It works easiest if you start at one end and do the side streets as you go through. So you can just pass through the corridor once
Mhm.
and do this, because there's only 3 blocks that actually have side streets. It's
Oh,
There's some where there's, no, like
Third,
6th and 7th
fourth,
don't
yeah.
have on-street
third,
parking.
fourth,
Right.
and eighth, I think, or something like that.
In the north section.
Fourth, fifth, and eighth, or something.
mhm.
And so, sorry, I've never done parking counts, so you just write down how many cars are parked on the street
Mhm.
and
Or
like
actually
the
how many
time?
parking spaces are taken, because there's often a truck pulling trailer that takes 2 spaces.
Yeah, we've been counting those as two.
Oh.
Yeah, and so like be handy if I could pull this up, but I'm not going to right now. So yeah, your name, the date, the time, and then on Polk, we want separate counts for like east and west for each block face. But then on side streets, just a total count of the side street is fine. And so then we look at, the number of cars that are parked versus the parking capacity to understand, well, how well used is it? Is there room for it to shuffle to side streets if we take it off Polk? Or would we really need to consider, like adding parking bays or some other like moderating factor?
So you can just choose whatever time's convenient for you. Okay.
Yeah, I will say evenings are typically, we don't get a lot of evening counts because who wants to be out in the evening, or weekend counts because who wants to be there on the weekend. So it's getting those is particularly useful because most people don't like to do that. That is my last slide.
Very good. Well, thanks, Catherine, for carrying a lot of the show today. All right. The next item on the agenda is something that started out to be like, I was hoping it could be like an actual agenda item, but it ended up because of where this master plan is at, kind of getting whittled down to just an informational that I'm going to give. So the Lane Event Center is in the process, a master planning process, which apparently was well advertised, but I missed it somehow. And as those of you who bike in the area know, Friendly Street and Monroe Street are both neighborhood greenways that, one way or another have some facilities for, or could have future facilities for making that a great bicycle corridor all the way from Friendly and 28th to the river, essentially. But the Lane Event Center sits there in the middle, and once upon a time, the gates were open there and you could bike through and make that a nice connection, albeit with a little bit of gravel at the south end of the center there, but now the gates are usually closed. It seemed like a great opportunity if we had discovered it earlier in the master planning process to sort of make a point that, this is kind of an important bicycle corridor, and it would be great if your plan included provision for that. And I belatedly sent in a comment on the website. Sue did the same. And I called and talked to the woman at Lane Event Center who I don't know exactly what her position is generally. I think someone in management there who is the point person on the master plan who indicated, well, it's mostly done, but it's going to be presented. What I wanted to tell this group about is that, if this is of interest to you, it's going to be presented to the county commissioners at their August 26th meeting. It's on the agenda to start sometime between 1:40 and 2 p.m. And it could be an opportunity to actually see what the plan is. And the plan itself will be part of the commissioner's packet. So you can look to see what the plan actually looks like. She didn't have the manager I talked to at the event center didn't have anything she could share with me at the time, but other than the older drafts that are on their website related to the restaurant. But it does seem like an important corridor, and I thought that this group, in lieu of an actual presentation that should have happened months ago about this, should at least know that it was happening, and if you're interested, pay attention and comment and whatever. It's not something, it's not really it's not a city agency. It's not something that we, are particularly being asked to comment on as a group, so it's really more for your individual interest. Any questions on that? Wherever I meant to look that up before I got here, wherever the Lane County Commissioners meet, which, and it would be streamed online as well. So if you don't want to be there in person, you can stream the meeting online, which like city council meetings. Anyone happen to know where the commissioners meet?
In that,
Harris Hall, I don't know.
in that hall.
The city Harris Hall.
Yeah,
I think.
that's where I would have assumed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And again, that's August 26th, with the agenda item scheduled to start sometime between 1:40 and 2. All right, next up, the policy subcommittee worked on a response to the presentation we got on what the city's doing regarding sidewalks. I'm hoping, it occurs to me, that neither Josh nor Nancy are here to present the work of the subcommittee. Is there anyone else from the subcommittee who is involved in crafting this response? And if there isn't, that feels like they could speak to it. If there isn't, I might actually defer action on this, because I don't know, without having the people involved drafting it, I would feel awkward, the rest of us just approving it, in case there were questions and things. So, seeing no one jumping up to say, yes, this is mine, I think we're just going to defer action on this. I don't think it's a rush. And after sidewalks letter, we've had to mention, we're losing a committee member after this meeting. Angie is going to be headed off to grad school up in Seattle. And we've typically taken the opportunity at the conclusion of the term, which is at the December meeting, of giving thanks to the folks who've been part of the committee and giving them an opportunity to reflect on what they've taken away from this experience. And so we wanted to give you that, first of all, extend our deepest thanks for having been a part of the committee and contributed so wonderfully over your time here. But also, oh, what are we
A
handing out?
little community cup,
Woohoo!
thanks.
It's good.
That will- yeah.
Hopefully you still have time to use it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Any reflections on your time as part of the ATC?
Overall, I'm really glad that I applied and took a chance. I was really nervous when I was applying. I was wanting to get more involved. It was right after I came back from studying abroad, and I was just like, I'm joining a club on campus. I'm gonna try joining a committee, and I thought that I wasn't gonna get accepted into the committee, and here I am. And I'm really glad that I took that leap. I think it pushed me out of my comfort zone in a lot of ways, being more comfortable talking to a variety of different people and just feeling more confident in expressing my opinions and how to do that in a productive way, and making a positive change in the community in a lot of different ways. And I'm just really grateful to have met everyone here and past committee members too, and learned a lot from everyone in a variety of ways, both transportation wise, but also just on a person level. So I'm very appreciative, and I'm really sad to leave early, so.
Well, it's been wonderful to have you here, both as a student at the U of O and someone who's so obviously invested in transportation and in transportation planning. And I would say I've noticed your increase in confidence as the time you've spent with us at this table or at the table downstairs. It's been great to see. I'm so glad you were here and contributing. All right. Thanks, Angie. We're gonna miss you. All right, we are running well early, but we're on to project updates, information share. And the, I don't think the infrastructure subcommittee or capital project subcommittee, we met after the last one, but we met on something specific.
It was Lincoln
It was
Street.
Lincoln.
It was Lincoln Street, right? We
Yeah.
went over the Lincoln Street plans,
So-
so we've kind of covered that. And the policy subcommittee worked on this letter, but there, you guys already covered, there's apparently the folks involved in that discussion are not here.
Yeah, I was also there. I just wasn't
Oh.
a big part of drafting the sidewalk
okay.
letter, so I didn't speak up for that. But I can kind of say what we've been working on.
Oh, great,
besides
yeah.
that. The two main things or three main things we're looking at next is like kind of responding to the Vision Zero work that I don't know how much there will be to respond to that, but then besides that, the other two things is cracking open the skateboard / micromobility code and seeing if we can make some recommendations there, which will probably be a whole thing that will take a while. So some of the people there were a little hesitant of jumping on that. And the third thing, which I've also been kind of getting involved with as the representative of the ATC going to BPAC a lot, is they've mentioned a few things that they'd like to see done in Eugene to help improve the connections, like specifically in Alton Baker and the Willamette Natural Area and like improving signage. For like, how do you find Springfield? It can be a bit of a maze the first time you go through Alton Baker trying to get to Springfield with all those intersections. And so we were kind of talking and we're like, why don't we make a joint letter about different ways that we can improve connections between the city? And so I am going to be going to one of the subcommittees of BPAC on September 4th. I will send the details in an email along with the draft of the letter that we're writing together. If anyone else is willing to join, that would be awesome. That way I don't have to be the only representative of this entire committee. But yeah, so the three main things we've been talking about so far, if you have additional ideas, that'd be awesome, is yeah, signage in Alton Baker Park for getting to Springfield, signage in the gateway neighborhood of Springfield for finding the I-5 bridge. It can be kind of a maze to like, if you're trying to get from the hospital to Eugene, it's a lot of little streets. And then the third thing is currently there's no pedestrian facilities on the MLK bridge that goes from, when it goes from MLK Boulevard to Centennial. There's just narrow bike lanes on either side and hundreds of pedestrians that cross that every game day. A lot of them are not super sober, and it's like, maybe we could restripe a lane to have multi-use spots on either side. So if you have additional ideas for improving the connection between the Eugene and Springfield, I'm going to send out a draft of that letter that I'd love to see you guys' additions there as well. So that'll be a big thing that BPAC and us and the subcommittee will be working on.
Peter, thanks so much for tackling this pretty much on your initiative and your sole work.
Yeah, there's also, yeah, 2 BPAC people that have been getting involved, so.
Right.
Yeah.
And September 4th, is there anyone else who can join Peter on this? I'm going to be out of town.
Do you remember the time? Was it 5:30?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And I'm gonna be out of town also. so-
Okay. Yeah. So it'll be over,
Peter and I can convene for that.
yeah, it'll be over Zoom too, so you can do it from home.
Yeah,
But yeah, if you could respond to my email when I send that out, that'd be awesome.
would be, and I hope someone does, well, it would be great to have another representative, because these are all great projects, I mean, and really needed.
Yeah.
So, and there's not really a good venue for planning those.
Yeah, especially the
connections.
MLK bridge is tricky because there's some road that's owned by the city of Eugene, Springfield, Lane County, and ODOT. Over the course of 1 mile, there are 4 jurisdictions, so that's gonna require a lot of collaboration.
I was something Catherine would love to take on. Well, I want to come back to subcommittee upcoming meetings, but since we're on the subject of BPAC, I thought I'd turn to Doug and representing BPAC. Do you have anything to report
Well, you
from?
just gave.
That's the report. Okay. That's what BPAC's working on is
That's the main thing.
okay.
Let's see, what else are we working? Well, there's some other projects that are being talked about. You know, there's this Mill Street construction.
The forever project, yeah.
And we think that it's gonna be a lot better when it's done, which is due the end of October. I mean, that's what they're saying.
Yeah,
Let's see.
there seems to be progress happening, but boy, it
Yeah,
seems like it's
yeah,
been going on
definitely
forever.
I mean, I live off of D Street now, and I can now go through D Street without having to go to E Street.
Oh, all right.
Well, also, isn't one of the bridges gonna be closed for a month?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the north side of the crossing the river bridge, the Green Bridge, that's gonna be closed for a chunk of summer. And there'll be one-way or two-way traffic on the other bridge instead
Hmm.
for a period of time. I don't know how long it's been. But that's planned.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Tom. Rachel, any updates from the university?
Everybody.
University planning?
I wish I knew more about the timeline for the transportation plan that my department is working on. I'm in transportation services at the U of O. Paul Comrie came and presented a few months ago to this group. Yeah, so he's the point person for the transportation plan at the U of O, which is identifying like key projects 20 years to the future that the university wants to invest in for transportation infrastructure. So that's going to wrap up, but I don't know exactly when. It's still going along.
All right.
But if you're curious about those details, contact me. I can ask Paul or put you in contact with him. There's a lot of construction going on this summer at U of O. I don't know if you ride through U of O at all, but just be aware summer is the time when lots of construction is happening. And this is like a thing I haven't cracked open yet, but I would love to be more connected to any of like the detour signage or just the planning around that for when construction does happen on campus, because I've heard anecdotally that it's not always great in terms of giving people, other places to go when roads are closed or buildings are closed. But yeah, it's kind of the summertime vibe. Very quiet.
The university is certainly not the only entity that has trouble notifying people where else to go. The contractor working on the upper end of, the southern end of Hilliard, which they're doing some repaving, they ripped out the whole multi-use sidewalk over a fairly large stretch, but with no signs about what cyclists were supposed to do. When they get there, they're just gone and marked up, I mean, they've got cones showing you shouldn't ride into the pit, but that's it. And it's a small pit. I mean, it's just the depth of the sidewalk, right? All right. There's one other thing here, which, Kevin, I don't know if you're able to speak to it. The Bright Parade apparently needs volunteers on September 27th.
Yes, did anyone attend the Bright Parade last year?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Well, if you did, great. If you didn't, there's another chance this September. I am not the main staff person coordinating this, but if you Google Eugene Bright Parade, there is a website and a landing page where you can sign up to volunteer. I know last year we did not get as many volunteers as we needed, and not ideal. So this year, hopefully there's more of a presence and we get more volunteers. It is fun. You get to like wear funny costumes and stuff. So would encourage folks to volunteer.
Very fun parade last year, which I thought I wasn't going to be here. I would have volunteered, but I ended up being there at the last second, just as an audience member. So upcoming subcommittee meetings, capital projects would normally meet on Tuesday. Is there something that we particularly need to talk about? One thought I had is we could just turn it into a Polk Street count if you guys are interested in that.
Well, I have a topic.
But if you have a topic,
But I'm not sure if there's anything we can do about it without input from the city. And that has to do with gaining right of way on 12th between Hilliard and Alder Street when the hospital sells the property.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I actually reached out to the land use planners about that because I was curious. And they said there's not much they can do because anytime, like, they can ask nicely, but doing anything beyond that is very quickly becomes like this legal idea of a taking, apparently. And like, it's very different to do that with redevelopment than greenfield development. So they're aware that that would be a really awesome thing to do and get from the redevelopment. But apparently there's not a whole lot the city can do to kind of take that land that is currently private land.
But they can't ask.
They can ask.
Well, you can also take it and pay.
And yeah, that would be eminent domain,
Yeah.
which yeah, you can ask them.
Public interest.
Yeah, that would be interesting, but it's tricky. Yeah.
Well, I do, if there's something that is merits sitting down and chatting about, at least I do have a thing or two I could bring too. So why don't we say for the capital projects committee, the usual 5:30 at Dark Pine, which should have plenty of space this year. And then Josh is not here to organize a policy committee, I assume he will be in touch with members of that committee to schedule when he gets back. And with that, we're like 15 minutes early, but is there?
That's okay.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that everyone would just, unless there's anything else that we need to talk about. So-
The only incidental thing I have on High Street that I had noticed, I witnessed a car turn into the two-way bike lane, on 8th and High. I don't know how often that happens, but since we have the audience, just to pass that along. It looks like they were just trying to access the back of, that theater's parking lot there. And then they cut back into, they quickly realized they were in the bike lane, but,
Yeah.
luckily I was going south instead of north.
I've also seen people turn into the bike lane there, so it's,
This happened.
they get confused.
I guess on a similar random note of occurrence, I recently moved to 31st Street, the Amazon bike path crosses that street. I'm 99% of the time on a bike, I'm rarely in my car, but when I'm in my car, I'm always scared that a biker is just gonna shoot, like bikers don't really stop at that intersection, obviously they have the right of way, but as a driver, I don't see anybody until you're like right up there, so I stop as a driver. But I've seen so many close calls and I live like 3 doors down and I'm like waiting for something to happen there. So I don't know what kind of like additional signage for bikers and walkers. It's kind of blind as a car to see those folks shooting through there. People don't even like try to stop sometimes. And is it, like, you see drivers like inching up past the stop bar and like.
There's not even, there's like a
approaching?
yield sign on
Okay.
31st, and so like cars are just continue,
Oh,
they
that
just
one,
take a
okay.
turn, yeah,
I
and so
see
you
what
just
you're saying.
continue. I know better to basically
No.
stop, but like lots of bikers don't even look.
This is
And-
31st and where?
The 31st and just like the Amazon, yeah, like Safeway, or not Safeway.
The Albertsons.
Albertsons right there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't know that unless if I
Because you
live
drive
right there, but
Albertsons.
it's, yeah, I'm like constantly waiting to hear of an accident right there, because it just, there's like a lot of, there's a lot of action and bikers don't yield at all.
Yeah, it could be something that we go, like the traffic operations team will look at like site triangles,
Mhm.
like making sure that we can see everyone, and I suspect that, right, I know like when I'm as a bicyclist, like if I can see, then
Mhm.
I feel safe, and so it could be that people are seeing the car, like when you bike through there, does it feel better, like you're able to see the cars?
Yeah, I think as a
Yeah.
cyclist, you have better
Better
vision, but as like a car, yeah,
Okay.
people just scoot through there 20 miles an hour and I'm scared to hit somebody when I'm even extra cautious around that crossing.
That's good feedback.
There's no yield, it doesn't tell bikers to like, I don't know, look when you cross both the street, like, yeah, the tension there's.
They're right next to the path, because it seems like, you know,
There could be.
I'm careful there, but it's sometimes hard to see.
Mhm.
Of course, it's not, yeah.
So like adding more yellow curb.
Yeah,
be an
I think there should
That could
be.
be, yeah,
I
or
think
just
they're
like
a big part of the
a street crossing sign or something, I don't know, it seems obvious to me as a biker, but lots of folks don't stop. And as the trees and stuff leaf out, I think it is just cover. Yeah, more in this vision, yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
10 minutes more in your evening.
I immediately emailed Stuart when I heard about that development. It's like, Stuart, what can we do? He's like, not much. I was like, dang it. So bad that anything that can be written like the barrier to new housing is gonna like. Yeah,
Just like a.
I mean, you know, Stuart, he's a homie, he understands, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, a case could be made for eminent domain and I like, you know, if ATC wants to make